unless you're a hardcore Van Halen fan, it's really hard for somebody like me on the outside looking in to say that Sammy Hagar didn't come in and almost surpass what Roth did with the band. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back, music lovers, especially my rock music lovers. Look, first I'll start off by saying this. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. I did. Got to see the family, the nieces, the nephews, kids had a blast. Now, I don't know if you can see it real well, but on my nose, my wife tried to mess with this crazy zit, so I look like Rudolph at the moment, which is cool because it goes with the holidays. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out before somebody else points it out in the comments. And my wife said put makeup on, but I said, fuck, who cares? Why try to hide it? It is what it is. We're all human, right? But when it comes to Van Halen, David Lee Roth era, Sammy Hagar era, there's something about both eras that just resonates with me like in an amazing way, even though I wasn't there. I wasn't there until late 80s, 88. Sammy was already with the band, but I got a great appreciation for both. And what? The first album that Sammy Hagar did with Van Halen and what it accomplished, I mean, Jesus, it's nothing short of amazing, and I have such an appreciation for it. I'm talking about 5150. Hey, everybody out there, can you do me a huge favor before we continue? Please subscribe to the channel. That is the one thing that you can do for me right now that will help me continue to grow. And that's absolutely what I am trying to do. I love doing this. Love talking to you out there, the audience. And rock and roll music, like I said before, it bleeds deep in these veins. There's nothing more that I'd rather be doing right now than talking to you and telling amazing stories. So please subscribe to the channel. So David Lee Roth left the band in 1984. Now, that transition from him to Hagar was seemingly a smooth one considering what happened when Sammy took the helm. But the last album with David Lee Roth, 1984, it did amazing. I mean, it sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Now, you got to understand, there was never a #1 album created by Van Halen. Now, the song Jump off of 1984 did hit the charts at #1 for quite a long time. The album actually would have reached #1 if not for another one of the most amazing albums of all time. And I'm talking about Michael Jackson's Thriller. But with all the success of 1984, David Lee Roth's eccentric ways and his crazy frontman style was amazing. I mean, he was fit to be a frontman. But that was also kind of his downfall with Van Halen because he kind of started to envision himself as a lot larger than the band. So once 84 was released and the success came, that's when the fighting began between, Eddie and Alex, David Lee Roth, and eventually David said, you know what, I'm going to go pursue my solo career. You guys do what you got to do. After David Lee Roth walked out the door, the Van Halen brothers were seemingly looking for a new lead singer. All roads ended up leading to the Red Rocker himself, Sammy Hagar, who actually just got done doing a very lengthy tour promoting his new album. Now, you got to realize, when Sammy Hagar first got approached, this guy is pretty much rooted in the rock community. He already had established himself as a great musician and a great rocker and had a very loyal fan base. Very loyal fan base. And one that I didn't realize until as I got older, and I have older family members, stepfather, uncles, who love Sammy Hagar, love Van Halen, and to come to find out how big Sammy Hagar was before Van Halen, it amazed me because that's what I thought was his, probably his biggest thing in his career, which really it wasn't. And it also depends on who you are and how you look at it. But no doubt, once Sammy Hagar showed up, they said the first time he showed up, come to rehearse with the guys and meet him. Alex is in the room just kind of sitting there chilling. You got Michael Anthony in there. You got Eddie who's sitting in a room full of guitars, cigarette butts all over the place. Guys look like they've been up all night partying. And they started to jam together. And as Sammy and Eddie and any of the other guys who have told the story put it, once they started playing, it was like it was meant to be. So the lead single that was released off 5150 was the song Why Can't This Be Love? Now, I vividly remember the song as a child. I remember always hearing it because, the family, they always had parties, friends over, family over, playing spades, rocking out, jamming music, just having a good time, usually until later in the night till people were too drunk and shit started getting out of hand. But for the most time, it was usually a good time. And Why Can't This Be Love is a song I always remember them playing, and a beautiful song. And if you notice, you transition from David Lee Roth, who was, running with the devil and hot for teacher, and you jump into Sammy Hagar, who was all about love, who has since said that was pretty much his main goal he wanted those songs to be about love and happiness and togetherness, which they hit that nail on the head. Now, why can't this be love? There's multiple interviews where Sammy Hagar has said, and I can't think of the producer's name, but when they were doing all the rehearsals for 5150, playing these songs, when they actually brought people in to hear Why Can't This Be Love for the first time, they played that lick, and once they were done, the guy that produced in the album said, I smell money. And I think that's amazing. So and that was probably an uncut raw version, was before they actually got in the studio and recorded it and edited it up a little. But it's not hard to hear an amazing song and know that, hey, this is something amazing. And I guarantee the guys that heard that song for the first time, besides the band, knew it was something special. Second single released off 5150 was the song Dreams. Now, this song might be my favorite Van Halen song of all time. If not, it's one of my favorite. And that's both eras, Sammy and David's era. This is one of my favorites all time. I mean, just the intro to the song is amazing. It pulls you in and it gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. And I'll be honest with you, this will show my age. When I hear the song, one of the first things I think of is the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie. Because at the end of the movie, they're playing the song Dreams and the fireworks are going off. But again, this goes back to what I said before. You don't have to have been there when that transition happened from David Lee Roth to Sammy Hagar to appreciate Van Halen as a whole and then that album 5150. Most people are going to say, you weren't even around when that album came out. Well, it doesn't, who gives a shit? It doesn't matter. If you can be around or not, doesn't make any difference on what you feel when you hear the music. And when I hear those songs, all of the songs off 5150, especially Dreams for me, gives me a great feeling. I feel the love coming from the guys, which that was their intent. So they hit their mark. With anybody else, if they feel the same, then that should make the guys even feel more special about what they did with that song and this album. But the song Dreams is absolutely amazing. Just another great single that they released off this album. And they weren't done yet. Now, the third single off 5150, Love Walks In, should be a very good reminder of how things changed with the Sammy era as opposed to the David Lee Roth era. And again, this will never be nothing. I'm not comparing the two and saying one's greater than the other. They both are amazing. But we're talking 5150 and we're talking Sammy era. That was the first song they actually wrote together with Sammy, Eddie and Sammy and the rest of the guys. That was the first song they sat down and wrote together for this album. So you got to realize, Eddie's one of the greatest guitar players of all time. You cannot deny that and you can't take that away from him. But Sammy was a great guitar player in his own right. So you now have this option of Sammy playing the guitar on live shows and on albums where Eddie could do other things like play the keyboard, which he loved to do, and play other instruments. So this was just a good reminder of what was to come with the guys. And it was only the beginning of more amazing things that were going to come from Sammy's time with Van Halen. But Love Walks In was a great, great song. And it was a true testament of what was to come with Van Halen moving forward with Sammy. So Best of Both Worlds was the fourth single released off 5150 and another amazing song. This was a very guitar-driven song. Very hard driven by the guitar. Now, no discredit to backup vocals, because most people say backup vocals, what the hell does that have to do with the greatness of a song? It has a lot to do with the greatness of any song or any band. And Michael Anthony, the bassist for Van Halen at that time and for a long time, he's one of the greatest backup vocalists in any band. I mean, again, you got to give credit where credit is due, because you don't realize sometimes how big of an impact that makes on a song. You don't even realize it. Sometimes it's just a little part of an instrument in a song, or a little part of a note that the lead singer or the backup singer hits. Sometimes that's what makes you feel an attachment to a song. It might not even be the whole song in its entirety, but you got to take those little key things into account when you're talking about what makes you feel emotion on a song. And Michael Anthony's backup singing skills are second to none. Amazing with his backup vocals. And this song was also kind of a, again, written by all the guys in the group. It was a complete collaboration by the entire band. And it was somewhat of an optimistic outlook on the future of what Van Halen was going to be moving forward with Sammy. They were going to create their own look. It was the best of both worlds. Amazing song, and another great song released off of a great album. Now, the rest of the songs on the album, Good Enough, Get Up, Inside, Summer Nights, and 5150, the title track, all are amazing songs. This entire album. In fact, on the way to family's house for Thanksgiving dinner, I listened to the whole album in its entirety, because I knew I'd be doing this video. On the way back home, I listened to it again in its entirety. Love the freaking album. Absolutely amazing. Now, 5150, the title track, that intro, that guitar intro, you might not realize it if you're not a guitarist, but those that are and those that realize Eddie's skills, that's a very hard intro to play. Now, Joe Satriani, who's currently out with Sammy Hagar, Michael Anthony, as they're doing a tour and they're primarily focusing on Van Halen music. And in fact, they'll be in my area next year, August 2024, and I would damn sure make sure I go see that show. But even Satriani, hearing him play that intro, a lot of people knocked him for it because it doesn't sound like Eddie. Well, nobody can sound like Eddie. Satriani's a great guitarist in his own right, and he's even said that's a very difficult intro to play. And, you know, he gives it a valiant effort. But when somebody creates an original, their style, their guitar, their song, it's hard to replicate it. And if you can come close, great. If you can't, there's no shame in that, especially if it's somebody like Eddie Van Halen. But this entire album, freaking amazing. And you know what? First Van Halen album to reach number one. Now, I do want you to realize something. Even though this was the first Van Halen album to reach number one, doesn't mean it's the greatest. In fact, the rest of the albums, the three to follow this with Sammy Hagar, all reached number one. Now, all that means to me is timing. You know, again, 1984, the last album they did with David Lee Roth, I guarantee that was a number one album. It was worthy of it. But the timing was off. Because you got Michael Jackson releasing his greatest album of all time, Thriller, who took the number one spot. So you can't be ashamed of losing out to that album, because that was a great album, one of the best-selling albums of all time. 1984 is a great album as well, and the same thing with all their albums before that. It's all about timing, you know. Just because you reach number one doesn't mean it's better than the album before. It just means that you were the best album that year and better than everybody else that came out. That's all that means. You know, you can't use that to say that one's better than the other. Sammy's albums are better than the ones they did with David because they reached number one. They did reach number one, but again, it's all about opinion. If you want to say that they're better and you actually like them better, then to you they are better. And those that say that David Lee Roth, Van Halen versions, their albums are better, then to them they are better. And that's just the way it is. There's no argument to be had because, again, it's opinion. But the fact that you had 4 albums with Sammy Hagar all reach number one does show that the new sound with the new lead singer was loved, and it was loved by many. But great album, 5150. If you're a Van Halen fan, I know you might have mixed emotions about it, but I'm sure there's a lot of Van Halen fans out there that love Sammy's version of the band just as much as you love David's version of the band. But in the end, it's just Van Halen. New lead singer or not. Great instrumentals by Alex on the drums, Eddie on the guitar, Michael Anthony on bass. And whoever was singing, they did a good job in being their self. And that's what Sammy did. And 5150 is a true testament to that. Again, great album. Thank you everybody for watching. I want you to go out there and do something great with your life. Go be with your friends and family. Go for your dreams. Go for your goals. I dare you to go for something great. Don't settle for nothing less than greatness. And until next time, take care of yourself. I'm out.